Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel, and in this video we are going back to the Dark Zones campaign and seeing how my progress is going in order to get my new list and all the models ready to attend Warhammer World in September. So the 22nd, 23rd of September is that date, and that's when 23 of us from the local area are all heading to Warhammer World for this campaign. It's been a long time since I've done a campaign, been a couple of years. Very much looking forward to it, but want to catch you guys up with the progress of the army, the painting that I had. I had about 38 models that I needed to complete for this project, with a couple of other little bits and pieces on some existing models that I needed to do. But before we go table down and take a look at that progress, if you're enjoying this series and you're looking forward to seeing the progress of the rest of this series and any of the other videos that I do, don't forget to click that subscribe button. It costs you nothing but means the world to me, so don't forget to do that. It'll be much appreciated. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the progress so far. So this is the overall state of play then. Let's take a look at some of the units and progress that we've made. So my Exalted Sorcerers have both been mounted on their discs now, so I had to make and paint a couple of discs up that I had knocking around. So those guys have now been complete. So my HQ contingent for my battalion for my 1,000 Suns is now done. Sorry, the autofocus does keep messing around as I wave my hand in front of my camera. My Rubric Marines, I do need to get 2 more with Warp Flamers. So there's 2 Warp Flamers in the list, so I need to sort that out. But the big focus over the last week has been getting the Zangors up to scratch. Now, 5 of them are 100% complete. So they've had line highlighting, their horns are all being painted, everything else. And the other 15 are almost there. So they are actually completely passable on a tabletop. In fact, you probably can't even tell the difference from this video angle. But there's a few little details that I need to do, like the daggers and the horns and so on. But they are completely up to scratch. They will work as is. The Shaman, on the other hand, has just been given a first coat of blue, so he's not got very far. And the Enlightened haven't had any progress at all on the actual models, but I have been working on their discs. So 2 discs are 99% complete now. Just need to do a couple more details on those 2. That's why I've attached them to the base now, because the underside is complete. And the other ones are still a work in progress. They've started having some colours applied, but until I've done the flame effect underneath, they're not complete. But you can see I've done all the bases as well, so I've been working on all the bases. So those have now been done. My cultists, I've just basically made the bog standard GW cultists at the moment. These are my backup unit. I do need 10 cultists in the list, but whether I keep those ones or whether I continue with my converted Zangor Acolyte ones, it's going to be a time factor. The demon element there, the flamers and the exalted flamers are all complete, so we haven't got to worry about those. And from the last video, Mutalith Vortex Beast has had no paint applied, but I have managed to complete its base, so that is all ready for airbrushing now. So yeah, no real progress on the Mutalith. But I have put together my Decimator engine, so you can see here with the Soul Petards, he is fully complete. I've also made his base. So he is not in my main 1750, he's actually in my combat patrol with some of those Zangors and one of those Exalted Sorcerers. That's my 500 point combat patrol. So that's the only reason he's there. He's not in the main list, he's just in the combat patrol for fun. So there we go, that's all the models and their current status. Now, I did manage to get a game in with these against Rich from the Floorhammer Podcast. I'll leave a link to that podcast in the description below. And he will be covering the battle in a bit more in-depth than I am going to on this channel. So it wasn't recorded, but he did take some notes because he is a podcaster and not a video type person. So you can go and listen to that and see what his take was playing from the opposition. Now, 1750 points is what we played, which is the limit for the larger games for this campaign. There are some 500 point combat patrols, which I have discussed about before. So 1750, this was my first road test of this new list. And I was playing against an Ultramarine Grey Knight Death Watch combination. So majority was Ultramarines. It was 3 tactical squads. It was a captain, a lieutenant, a dreadnought, a whirlwind. I think that pretty much covers what was on the Ultramarine side. Then there was a Corvus Darkstar with Artemis and a unit of Death Watch in. And then there were 5 Terminators and one of the Terminator Grandmasters, I believe, all in Terminator armour, so they could come in and deep strike and cause me a load of grief. Plus it also acts as his main psychic contingent from his army. Now, as you can see from my model collection, there is quite a large number of what we call drops, so lots of units that I need to declare where they're being deployed, which leads me to believe, I'm not going to get that +1 bonus for deploying first in pretty much most scenarios, I would imagine. I've got quite a number of drops. In fact, let me just have a quick calculation. I have 11 drops in this list, which I think is just a little bit above average. I think normally it's around about 8, 9, maybe 10-ish. But 11's quite a large number, so I'm expecting to probably go second. However, in this this little battle report, I'm just going to sort of word through the main turns. Rich did manage to roll a 1 with his +1 for going first. I did then roll a 6, which meant I could go first, which was awesome. And then he stole the initiative, which meant I didn't. So yeah, I had to withstand a large amount of shooting from the first turn, which wasn't actually that painful, to be honest. The Thousand Suns Marines and Rubric Marines are really resilient to stuff that only does 1 damage, giving them a 2+ save. So that was pretty effective, and a lot of his stuff had to move forward to try and get onto objectives. So the incoming fire wasn't as painful as I thought. I think I lost maybe 2 or 3 Rubrics and a couple of Zangors, but that was about it. And then the speed of my army, I think, was quite surprising. The Enlightened and the Flamers and the Exalted Flamers moved pretty damn quick. So I was actually able to cause some damage in my first turn as well. In fact, the Corvus Dark Star, Black Star, Corvus, the flying vehicle that the Death Watch used, went down pretty early. In fact, that was the first blood from my side. The ability, my Forge Fiend is my anti-flying device, right? Because I don't have any flyers, so I'm using that thing. I'm casting Prescience on it, and then I'm using a stratagem to re-roll all hits and all wounds with it. So that is my anti-flyer device. Now, we were playing mission objectives, so a lot of this involved getting some good cards, which turned out a little bit in my favour. I had 1 to defend an objective, which my cultists happened to be deployed on, which was rather convenient. And then I had to push forward and try and see some of the others, which worked out quite nicely. But some notable points of interest. The first one is the Mutalith Vortex Beast is awesome. For 150 points with his magic power buffs, I used 3 or 4 of them, not just picking standard ones. So I did use 1 to increase the AP on some weapons on my Zangors. So going to AP -2 against Marines really makes them struggle to save, which is good. I used 1 for a re-roll on the charge, and they already have +1 to their charge distance, so that worked out quite nicely for me in a couple of scenarios as well. And then the one where he can just cause 1 mortal wound to every enemy model within 9 inches. Now, we were on our last turn. Both his characters were on 1 wound each, hiding behind some of their Ultramarine brothers, and then I rolled that power up, and yeah, he managed to snipe the last 2 wounds off of both his characters, which netted me Slay the Warlord, and I think I had a character killer, a Warlord killer card in my deck as well, so that worked out rather nicely. Second key point of note for me being a practice game, and I haven't used a lot of these units before. I've never used Zangors at all, let alone Enlightens and so on. I really need to learn my stratagems. Now, I know I love taking these Zangors, I've done a bit of research trying to make sure that I can get a good unit in here. And I talked about how many times you can buff that particular unit. And then I forgot the key stratagem of for 1 command point they can fight again in a combat phase. And that probably cost me a large portion of the game, really, because it meant a lot of Marines stayed alive, were able to fall back and do more shooting and so on. And that really withered my numbers down of my Zangors. But that's the kind of thing that these playtests allow you to highlight, so that you're not going to forget them in the heat of battle next time you use it. So yeah, Zangor's hitting twice or fighting twice with an AP -2 weapon. Yeah, that's gonna get through some models, I think. So big thing about playtesting is then remembering your stratagems. And one thing I did know was that I had a command point farmer going on, so I've taken one of the relics within the Thousand Suns that allows me to regain command points every time my opponent tries to use a stratagem. So on a 5+, I get a command point back, and at one point I was 3 command points over my starting limit. So I I think I have 9 on my start, and I ended up at 12 at one point, and I was struggling to spend them. So at this point I was going through the book trying to find what cool stuff I could actually use. And one of the good things was warp flame gargoyles, which can be used on a Tzeentch demon vehicle, except Hell Brutes and Hell Drakes. So there my Forge Fiend was in combat with some Terminators, and he pulls this little trick out and starts inflicting mortal wounds on these Terminators from spitting fire out of his exhaust system, which I thought was quite fun. And another little highlight from the game was an Exalted Flamer was about to be charged by Artemis. And you got a choice of Overwatch here, so you can either go with his pink flames, or you can go with his little flames. And I went with the basically the mini las cannon shots that these things can do. It's only 3 shots, whereas I could have gone with the D6 Overwatch shots, which would have auto hit. I went with the nastier shot, and I rolled a 666 for Overwatch, and Artemis was smushed. However, one of the other things that I did know was that my army still struggles with demon saves. Trying to roll a 4+ seems to be quite difficult for me. If you've watched the battle report versus Idic Nick Beer, my demons rely on that 4+ save, and I'm not very good at making them. So that theme still continued with my demon element, even though my flamers did a little bit of damage. They took more punishment than they gave out, but they were a good stopping unit, and they did secure an objective for me, and they did defer or put off Ultramarines charging into them. So that's a brief summary of some of the highlights and lowlights of that battle. As I said, if you want to go and listen to a little bit more in-depth on that battle report, please go and check out my mate Rich over at the Floorhammer Podcast, and he will give you a different perspective maybe, and hopefully give some more detail. But for now, that's going to wrap this video up. I hope you are enjoying this series. If you do, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall catch you guys on the next video.